Hi everyone, welcome. Good afternoon to the 333 Premier webinar of HDFC Securities. I'm Payal Pandya from the Investment Advisory team. And with us today we have Apurva, who will take us through IT sector, the second quarter, how the results have been, and the way forward towards the sector. Hi Apurva, welcome.
Hi Payal, thank you so much.
So Apurva, how has the quarter been? I mean, for IT, of course, we have seen that there have been a lot of new deals in several companies. These deals, fresh deals, were higher than the first quarter, what the first quarter saw, and the picture looks very rosy from the next 1 or 2 years perspective. I was also reading a Fitch report which said that FY no 2021 and 22 are expected to be really robust years for IT sector. How do you look at these?
Yeah, so I'll take the first part of that question. So the quarterly numbers were I think were positive. The revenue beat versus estimate was roughly in the range of about 2.5%, and the profit beat versus estimates was in the range of about 6 to 7%. So that was the extent of beat versus estimates. In terms of how much the earnings estimates for FY22 and FY23 changed, that was roughly in about 5% range. So I think it was a combination of both stronger comeback of the overall demand, as well as a substantial beat on margins. So it was really twofold. So after the first quarter impact of high single-digit Q1Q decline that most of the IT companies faced, as there were big supply challenges as well as near-term demand that got compressed. I think second quarter, a lot of that reversed in the second quarter. A lot of growth was attributed to some of the faster growing verticals such as BFSI, which has been outperforming over the past few quarters for IT companies. So that helped, in terms of the revenue growth coming back much stronger in the second quarter. And what also happened at the margin level, there were substantial savings. So IT companies typically would spend about 2.5 to even 4% of their revenue on travel costs. This was the norm till about 2 quarters back. So there were obviously substantial savings that came, as a result of that. There was a deferral of wage hikes which happened, which were not given in first quarter, second quarter, which is typically when they are handed out. There were savings on account of that. There were savings on account of lower spend on sales and marketing. So I think operational efficiencies led also to margin expansion, which is also why you saw most of the IT companies providing a margin beat, and all of that translated into better numbers overall for the second quarter. So we were fairly confident that this is going to be the trajectory when we had written in June sometime, in terms of why 1Q would be the bottom, and we see recovery beyond that. That's pretty much played out there. And if I have to combine this with the view on the sector and going forward, how that's going to pan out. So margins will probably normalize. I think margins in the second quarter is probably near peak levels. If you have to look at an aggregate level for the sector, you may have still some company specific cases where margins can expand even further. But overall, as a sector, margins are probably near peak levels because some of the cost pressures is likely to come back in the third and fourth quarter. So that is one. And the Q1Q revenue expansion will not be at the pace at which was the second quarter. So while that continues to be healthy, while the overall industry tailwind is very, very strong around spend that most of the enterprises are doing around digital transformation, I think those are some of the factors which will ensure very strong growth over the medium term relative to historical trends for IT companies, which are operating at a substantial scale on a larger base versus where they were operating earlier. So yeah, so I mean that's really one way to look at it.
So Apurva, in that case, like you just mentioned that the costs are likely to increase in the near term now. So that also brings me to the question of the ban on H-1B visas. Okay. And if that happens, and if like Infosys also commented in the news that they are looking to hire some 13,000 people locally. So with this, a lot of companies will have to do a local hire instead of H1B hires, which will be much more expensive. If we see the comparative, their employee cost would go up to that extent in some multiple, right? So how much is this likely to impact the margins? While you've already mentioned that the margins are likely to mellow down a little bit, but what could be the level of impact of these?
Sure. So on the H1B, while I'm not sure the prospects of that getting banned, but there are obviously restrictive executive orders in terms of raising the minimum H1B wage as high as 30-40% in some cases. So those will be constraining factors, and it will create on-site wage cost inflation. But having said that, if you look at the past few years, this was already a problem. So there was already a lot of RFEs, as they call it, or more higher reject rates for many of the H1Bs over the past few years. So if the reject rates in the past were in the range of 5, 7, 8%, they went as high as 30-40%. So there were much higher reject rates that was happening. The overall cost of delivery on site was increasing because there was, as it is, a supply crunch. So these were some of the aspects which were impacting the which have been impacting the industry for the past 3 to 4 years now. What they have done really to address this is they're trying to hire a lot more on site on the fresher side. So just the way that they have built a offshore pyramid, that's really the structure that they would want to build on site and have a more distributed workforce. Versus a workforce which is located in fewer cities. The moment you distribute your workforce, across United States, you're getting advantages of differential, wage structures. And that's something which they've been doing. So they've been doing a lot of fresher hiring. They've been doing a lot of hiring in non-New York, New Jersey, non-California related regions. So they've been doing a lot of that, and that's been the strategy. So Infosys has already done 12, 13,000 in the past 3 years. They plan to do a similar quantum of the next 2 years. TCS has also been doing that. If you see the localization rates, those are substantially up. So about 3 to 4 years back, the H1B as a percentage of the number of H1B as a percentage of the total US workforce used to be in the region of 50-60%. And the local workforce was, in the region of 30-40%, 40%, 40 to 50%. So that's completely reversed now. So you have local workforce currently with most of the IT companies as high as even 70% of the workforce. So really, talking about the 30% of US workforce. So to that extent, I would say that the risk of something like this happening, a lot more restrictive H1B practice, the risk of that is reduced substantially. This was a far bigger risk a few years back. And I think this is something they will be able to navigate. So I think there is already litigation around increase in the minimum H1B wage. It will be a deterrent to margins. Right now, we're not really building in, in our estimates, a substantial increase in H1B wages.
Okay, so assuming that has been there for some time, these companies would be able to manage whatever comes up on this front. Now, if they are supposed to scatter their operations even in foreign countries, just like they have done domestically, how much do you think will they be able to, build resources in every place? And what is the importance of cloud in all of this? Because of course, not just for the IT companies, but for all other sectors as well, cloud services have started picking up considerably because of the way the method of doing business is changing, or be it work from home or work from anywhere, right? As it picks up, and while a lot of companies and uh, businesses might go back to the old routine, there is quite a chunk of people who would still continue with this and maybe make it a new normal for a very, very long time. So, what's the kind of growth we are seeing in this aspect?
Right. So, I mean, if I got it correctly, work from home, look, right now it's a very high number. We are operating in an environment where there's a lot of lockdown, second wave coming up in many other geographies. So most of the IT companies are currently at 90-95% work from home. Some of them have talked about a work from home number, which will be substantially high as even 70-75% over medium to long term in a normalized environment. Most of the other IT companies have not really put out a number. But I think what is very clear is that the percentage of work from home will certainly be a much higher number than where it used to be. So it's certainly going to be a more hybrid, work from anywhere type of a concept, which will come up. I think the benefits is substantial in the sense that the fungibility of workforce of labor supply. I think that is one very big factor which would benefit IT companies if this goes through. So right now it's difficult to really build a number as to company will in future in a normalized environment will operate at 30%, 40% work from home, because a lot of it is a function of the decisions of the end clients of many of these IT companies, and whether they're okay to operate under that kind of a model themselves. There are a lot of challenges around data security, cyber security related areas. So I think it's an evolving area. The fact that if in work from home, if IT companies are able to change the delivery mix of, in the sense that if they can move work from on-site to offshore, now that can be margin accretive. So hypothetically, if 10% of the revenue moves from on-site to offshore, so right now it's probably 50-55% of revenue is about on-site. So if let's say they move that 10% switch, so if that becomes a 45-55, that can potentially help margins by even 2 to 3 percentage points. So that is roughly the impact. So I think the real deal is going to be one, the fungibility of workforce. That's what I think will be a benefit for IT companies. And secondly, if they're able to move that work, the mode of delivery from on-site to offshore, because there are a lot of related costs, even from a work from home model. There are the procurement of IT infrastructure. There are still substantial overheads with many of these very large centers. So I think it's on a like-to-like basis, there is not substantial cost savings unless there is a change in the mode of delivery. So yes, that is certainly an area of opportunity. And to the other part that you asked on the cloud side, very much that is the biggest opportunity. So I think when most of the companies are talking about digital, I think the biggest moving part there is cloud, and migration of workloads to cloud. And if you look across, most of the enterprises that have done better during this period across industries are the ones who had invested a lot more proactively in tech. Those are the ones who have turned out to, not just manage the situation better in a much more resilient manner, but even grow newer service lines and outperform the overall industry. So I think that is not just a differentiator anymore. I think that is the most essential part. The question is, where does the value migration happen? So a lot of value migration moves from some of the old tech companies to some of the hyperscalers, the AWSs, Azure, GCPs of the world, the Salesforce of the world. So, but yes, Indian IT, fortunately, the past few years with the kind of investments that they've made around reskilling, training, I think they have come up the curve, and they're very core partners for many of these cloud providers. And I think that's where a lot of net new business is coming in. So while there is a lot of refactoring of tech spend, which continues to take place, I think a lot of net new dollars is getting invested in this, which is also the reason that if you look at some of these companies, they continue to grow at 20-25% even in the current environment. So what's supporting it? The fact that tech spend as a percentage of revenue is going up. What is the evidence of that? If you look at the largest banks in the world, and they're probably one of the biggest spenders of tech, and also very mature spenders of tech, their own spend on tech is going up as a percentage of their revenue. So I think that is very clearly a trend. You look at retailers, the largest retailers globally, who are very large clients of Indian IT companies, and you look at their commentary in terms of where they're investing. So the ones who had a much stronger omni-channel or a curbside delivery, they're the ones who handled the crisis much better. So I think while a lot of these technologies were already available, I think the propensity for many of the industries to adopt these technologies, that is something which has changed. I think that has got accelerated in a big way. What does that do, and where does that land into the numbers for Indian IT companies? So to just to illustrate this to you, the revenue that was added in the last 4 years for the sector, so FY17 to FY21, incremental absolute revenue, that is going to be in the next 2 years, it will be more than what you had in the last 4 years. So in absolute terms, that's what it is. What it does in percentage terms, so you were growing at about 7% last 5 years. That 7% accelerates to about 10% or so. Profit growth, which was at about 7-8% over the past 5 years, that accelerates to about 11-12%. If I'm looking from FY21 to 23, that's really what we are projecting. So there is a very meaningful acceleration on a much substantial base. So the incremental revenue or incremental profitability is in absolute terms is significantly higher, which means that a large part of this change is getting capitalized by many of the Indian IT companies. And what also is happening is there is a big vendor consolidation wave. So which allows many of the Indian IT companies to continue to win market share. I think that's been again a big hallmark for many of the Indian IT companies. If you look at so just to give you a perspective on this, the top 10 Indian IT, or let's say top 4 Indian IT and top 6 globally. So top 10 Indian IT about 15 years back had 6% market share. In the past 15 years, that 6% has gone up to 26%. Of the incremental business that came in the last 15 years, 50% of that went to top 4 Indian IT companies. So that's been the kind of market share swing which has happened, and this has happened across cycles. Be it technology cycles or be it period of pre-GFC, post-GFC, or even the recent digitization phase where the overall industry's growth has come down. So that is again a very big positive. So the fact that you are not dependent on the industry growth rate as much as market share gains to grow, that was one thing which was happening. Coupled with that, now you're having the added overall industry tailwind to help you grow faster. So I think that vendor consolidation is probably going to continue. So a lot of enterprises who had 5-6 vendors will squeeze that to 4 to 5 vendors. So there is going to be cut down a number of vendors. There is a lot more efficiency and pricing advantage that Indian IT companies have versus many of the on-site vendors. So there will be that shift which will continue to happen, which will ensure not just near-term growth, but growth for I think a substantial period of time. And all of this is, when I'm talking about all of this, this is about 80 to 85% of their client base. Still 10 to 15% of the client base, which is travel, hospitality, some of these segments, those are still segments which will take a much longer time to come out of the crisis. But for most of the other large segments like BFSI, retail, CPG, life sciences, healthcare, I think growth has come back in a substantial way. So we're fairly positive. So it's a long answer to the question, but just to put it together, I think that's how we're looking at it.
Correct. So obviously, we are seeing a lot of tailwinds in the IT sector, Apurva. But there's one thing that puts me into a question is, IMF expects, rather it has estimated that the global GDP is likely to decline by about 4.4% for calendar year 20. Now, hypothetically thinking, if what IMF has estimated turns out to be true, so then the global GDP declines 4.5%, and that of emerging markets and developing countries may shrink by about 3.3% as per IMF. If that happens, now as it is already understood that Indian IT companies derive about 85% of their revenue from US and Europe, which is the worst affected. In fact, they are the ones who are also getting into the second round of lockdown and things like that. So whatever growth that has currently come in the form of new deals and things like that, that may sail us through pretty well for the next 1 or 2 years. But is this a sustainable kind of a trajectory? Also, when in the last most recent months, we have seen that the dollar also has started cooling off. How do you see that? Because if the overall growth slows down to such a level, which is actually expected to be, which is said to be the worst decline after the Great Depression in the 1930s. So, with that kind of a slowdown, I think the revival also will be pretty slower, not as much as, so countries like India, for example, might revive sooner because we are relatively less affected if we compare ourselves to Europe and US. So we are in a much better condition with very less of death rates and things like that. That of course acts as a positive point for us and our growth. But if our larger customer base of almost 85% lies there, isn't that a concern?
Sure. So you're right. I mean, the fair point, but I think that is a concern. I think a lot of these numbers are based on the decline, which is already seen in the June and September quarter. And I think most of these global estimates are building in some sort of a revival. Obviously, what is debatable is the shape of recovery. So one may believe that it can be a lot more flattish versus much steeper curve. So you got to 85, 90% after that decline in a much stronger way. So it is really at 90% that where we operate. But what happens from there on? What's the shape of recovery? So I think that is something which is really difficult for us to look at. But I think what is very important to see is that the resilience is played out very well for the sector. So look at the IT sector. So in a year, like you mentioned, is going to be mid-single digit decline. India probably double-digit decline. US about 7-8%, and these are in real terms. Uh, I think the IT index, IT sector decline for this year, it's not even going to decline. It's going to be a flat year. So you're outperforming by 600, 700 basis points in a bad year. Even on nominal terms, you're outperforming by 300, 400 basis points versus the overall global GDP, as compared to outperforming when things were normal, when GDP was growing at 2.5% for US and 3 to 4% for globally. You were growing higher than that. So you're growing at a premium in good times. You're growing. You're not falling as much in bad times. I think that talks about resilience. I don't know too many industries which are outperforming nominal GDP by 300, 400 basis points. So I think that is talking about resilience. And now why is that happening is, to my earlier point of the overall tech spend as a percentage of revenues going up. So while you see many of the enterprises, their own revenue is contracting, the cut downs to tech spend is not really as much. So I think that is something which is helping them. The good thing is that a lot of these investments in some of the digital areas is becoming more non-discretionary. So a lot of investments in some of these cloud-related, as you mentioned, or front-end digital was more discretionary, and they were much smaller size project. What has happened is it started to become so much more core to the business that the size of contracts in digital that has increased over a period of time. The conversations has just gone beyond the CIOs and CTOs of the organization. So they're selling into a lot more. The endpoints have increased, for most of the IT companies, and that's really the difference that they've been making over the past few years. And I think those are reasons why, in a scenario that when things starts to recover, there is hope that they come back in a much stronger way. So I mean, looking at historical data, they have very clearly outperformed. And I think that is something which is very clearly reflecting in the overall valuations too. So for example, when they were growing at about 7-8% earnings with the kind of payout that they do, they were trading at 16, 17 times. Today they're expected to grow at 11, 12% earnings figure. So they are trading at 21, 22 times. So on a PEG basis, it's pretty much not similar. And this is a large industry. We are talking about $290 billion by market cap. That's about 13, 14% of Indian listed equity. That's about 65, 70 billion dollars of revenue, 10 billion of free cash that they generate every year. That's the kind of profit that they do every year. About 15 billion of cash that they have. So mature by all sense. The fact that they pay out so much substantial amount every year and they kind of generate that kind of cash, I think that also plays a very strong part in the overall value. So I think the fact that DSOs of many of the IT companies actually came down. So you would think that, in a scenario like this, collections is going to be very difficult for them. That's not happened. DSOs across the board, all the IT companies since March has actually trended down. That tells you about their relevance to their end clients, which is actually increased in tougher times like this, because these are critical operations that they manage. So business continuity is obviously top priority for most of the enterprises globally. And so is cash conversion, and in that environment they've managed to improve their collections. So that tells you about the credibility of that sector. So some of the structural aspects I'm not really too bothered about. I think the only bone of contention is really how can the near-term swings pan out. Like you rightly said that with second wave coming up in Europe in a lot more dominant fashion, and with them entering lockdown, there are repercussions to that. And there are a lot of macro factors with the way currency has been swinging. So DXY, for example, correcting will have twin implications. So what it does to the rupee will hurt Indian IT companies, but what it does to a euro or a GBP, with euro GBP strengthening, that is positive. So it gets net off by the appreciation in euro and GBP if DXY trends downward. So I think it's so right now we're not building in too much by means of currency depreciation. Look, historically currency has depreciated about 4% every year. In the recent past, it's been more like 2.5 to 3%. We are building in about a 2% depreciation every year. But if you can crystal ball and tell me that the next 4 years is going to appreciate, well, then estimates will change, because we are certainly not building that in. So we do build in a 2% depreciation every year. So I think that's it.
Okay. So Apurva, I remember talking about IT sector last when we had a discussion, and you had mentioned that it was the best time to stay overweight on this sector. Would you still say that it is a good time to stay overweight, or maybe we should come down to a relatively lesser level? And considering the valuations are high now, and we are expecting the margins also to moderate a little bit. And then, of course, from the report itself, there was one little observation that if we consider the top tier IT companies and the mid tier IT companies, there is a little bit of different manner in which they are behaving. So, for example, the mid tier IT companies are performing far better on the EBITDA margin front, while the top tier companies are outperforming their peers in terms of top line. So I'm not able to understand where is this disconnect. Is it the kind of businesses that the top tier companies are into, or the markets, as compared to collectively the mid tier companies? So how should we deal with this?
Right. So so we are constructive in the sector. We are positive in the sector. Look, we are coming off almost like a 60% move in the last year, about close to 40% move in the last 6 months for most of these stocks. And this is 60% for the index. There are companies that have doubled in 5-6 months or so. So where our estimates are, we believe that the fair values or upside cases probably closer to 14-15% from here on. So to that extent, a large part of that up move is looks behind us. There are obviously stock specific cases where we do see a 20 to even 30% type of an upside. So revenue growth, actually, you're right, it was much better for tier 1 companies this quarter. Last quarter it was a mixed bag. So the surprise portion was tier 2 actually performing as well as tier 1 IT in a very tough quarter. So I think many of them actually ended up outperforming. Why on the EBITDA or the profit you see a much stronger beat is because of their operating structure. So they are typically of a much lower margin. So when there are similar, margin tailwinds that work for, across the industry, whether it is travel cost reducing or it is, the currency factor, which helped over a 2-quarter period on a net basis. Those have a larger impact on the overall profitability, and that's more to do with their margin structure, and some of the efficiencies which got released, and therefore you saw much stronger margin expansion. But I actually think that in fact even many of the tier 1s have done reasonably well So TCS has come up, improved their margins significantly. Infosys actually improved their margins a lot more than TCS, the past 2 quarters. In the first quarter, it was the margin improvement. So while there was a big revenue decline in the first quarter, margins were flattish. So they actually were able to grow margins, but because of the volume compression, margins, were maintained. It was more SG&A driven in the first quarter. In this quarter, it was more gross margin driven because there was a much bigger switch from on-site to offshore. And as utilizations improved and with growth coming back, it showed up more on the gross margins. It was more a function of that which helped them really. So, but yeah, I mean, we do see that margins should cool off from here. We are slightly more positive on tier ones. I think the risk reward is more favorable because the upside is roughly similar for both tier one, tier two from where they are. It's roughly in the range of 15% or so. Tier twos have mid-tiers have rallied a lot more than many of the tier ones. And in a scenario that if we are entering, if the risk factor increases with some of the macro-related issues, if they get bigger, I think that flight to quality is something which may also play out, and that may merit again the tier ones. So which is why we are slightly more tilted towards tier one for the time being. As compared to mid-tier, but there are very strong mid-tier names at the same time where we are fairly positive about. There's a lot of stock-specific activity in mid-tier. So there are, for example, mid-tier companies of 1.3, 1.4 billion dollars that have won $200 million deals, back to back 2 months. So you basically have 70% visibility of their incremental revenue for the next 3 years. So that's like one case. There's another company which has completely turned around. They used to grow at 4 or 5%. Now, they've started growing at 14, 15%. There's been a change in leadership, and so I mean, these are some examples of. There's going to be a lot of stock-specific action in the mid-tier. But if I have to pick, I think I'll slightly be a lot more. I'll be tilted more towards the tier ones from where we are right now.
Okay, that explains. Apurva, in that case, do you want to put a name to it, and whether it is tier one or the mid-tier companies, or as well as, do you suggest that there is any company which is maybe doing great business, but it has really exhausted its valuation, and you really think people should book some amount of gains if they have, whether the company is really performing well or not? Do you fear any kind of correction?
No, I would say, look, there are stocks where you would not have substantial upside, from where it was. So I'm saying, so stocks such as a Mindtree, for example, or an L&T Technologies, for example, and if I have to name some stocks, or L&T Infotech, which has probably been the best performer, and it used to be our preferred pick for the longest period of time. So I'm not too sure if we have a very substantial upside there. Though it gets a bit restrained after this. But if there are very, I think, strong opportunities in names such as an Mphasis, for example, or a Persistent Systems, these would be names within the tier two. So one has to, I think, be a lot more selective, I think, in tier two. While the overall tailwinds, are certainly there, and it's not that growth starts trending the other way for many of these companies. But if you see, along with the overall valuations and how they've trended, from a risk reward perspective, I think one should be more selective, in that. From the tier ones, it's Infosys and HCL Tech. I think those are the names that we prefer over the others. We are also constructive on some of the other names, but if we have to pick two, it will be HCL Tech and Infosys, from the tier ones.
Okay, thanks a lot, Apurva. This is quite insightful on the IT sector after all the run-up that has happened, after all the positive quarters that we have seen, and whatever has been spoken about the sector and its tailwinds. I'm sure we have a clear picture of what to put money in now. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you. Cheers.